After the Dolphins got eliminated from the playoffs, Tyreek Hill said that he's done. And it's kind of crazy for a player just to say it like that straight up. But I hope you guys enjoy the watch and comment any of your thoughts below. The Dolphins have gone 8-9 and just lost by 12 points against the 2024 Jets. And although the Dolphins were missing Tua, and even if they won, they couldn't have made the playoffs, Tyreek Hill, after the game, straight up said that he's done with the team. Not much to try to dig up, honestly.
As I'm opening the door, I'm out, bro. So
In Mike McDaniel's and the Dolphins GM's exit interview, one of the first questions was about Tyreek. The GM, Chris Greer, and Coach McDaniel, according to them, have had productive conversations on Hill's future, though. But if I'm being honest, I think these so called productive conversations are either Hill might not be fully set on leaving, or it's I'll only go to a situation that I might like more. Greer would kind of deflect the question and start talking about how proud he is of the team to bounce back from 2-6. Greer did mention though that Hill hasn't officially requested a trade. Both that and what I said earlier on how their conversation probably went, it makes sense if a trade maybe hasn't been formally requested, as sometimes we see it takes a couple weeks for a trade to be requested in situations like this. Now, in Tyreek Hill's 3 seasons with the Dolphins, his first two, he put up 1,700 yards back to back and was honestly looking like the best he has in his career. In the playoffs, both those years, though, he'd be first rounded. And the Dolphins, since the Mike McDaniel era started, they're under 500 against teams who have a record that's actually above 500. And I believe that they have less than 5 total wins against those teams in these 3 seasons. But the exact reason that Hill might want to leave, though, if I had to guess, it's because of the rotating door at quarterback and the inconsistency of this team. And obviously, the team has their starting quarterback who they threw the bag at in Tua, but Tua spent a lot of time on the injury report for mostly concussions. As of late, he's struggling with a hip injury. That's nothing serious, though. But they put together a super deadly offense last season in which Tua was healthy for. But a team the Dolphins are just clearly not dominant, especially with a losing record, like I said, against teams above 500. And a lot of people are starting to question the roster's commitment to the team, necessarily their commitment to McDaniel and how good of a leader Mike McDaniel might actually be. Who would trade for Tyreek Hill, though? What's the asking price? And would the results of Devontae Adams' trade lower his value and the fact that the Jets didn't really get much farther? And honestly, on that last thing, I don't think his value will be too low or lowered by that. And Tyreek played through every game this year. His regression is mostly due to battling a wrist injury and to mostly subpar quarterback play. For the 11 games Tua played, 85% of Hill's yards would come. And in a full season of playing with Tua, he would have been on pace for 1,300 yards. And this doesn't include the fact that there probably would have been a couple extra big games in there too. I don't think a team gives up the same package Miami gave for Reek though, but I don't think it'll be um like what Devontae Adams got traded for. And he'll probably be in the ballpark of a B tier player and a second round pick if I had to guess. What are the ideal teams though that he might be traded? Well, I'll give you my number one team, a sleeper team, and a team that I don't think will happen, but I've seen a lot of other people predicting. And starting off with my sleeper team to land Tyreek Hill, and I actually am going to believe that that's the Jacksonville Jaguars. And look, I understand that Tyreek Hill hasn't been a big fan of mediocrity or losing, but the Jags, I don't think, played up to their full potential this season, and the same could be said about the Dolphins. But I think the Jaguars are starting a lot fresher and may want to make a splash early. Now, because of the front office, Hill may not like Jacksonville, but the thing he'd like about being in Jacksonville is the fact that it would still be in Florida. I could honestly see the Jags wanting to send Christian Kirk and a second to Miami in return for Hill. I think there could be a late round pick swap with this. Now, like I said, Christian Kirk would be going to Miami mainly for the fact that the Jags have a full wide receiver room. Having to try to fit in Christian Kirk, Tyreek Hill, and Brian Thomas Jr. might end up a little frustrating. Now, I don't really know if Christian Kirk is wide receiver 2 material. I think he is a little bit closer to wide receiver 3, but I think he's still fine as a wide receiver 2. Now, for the money that you'd have tied up between Tyreek Hill and Christian Kirk, I just don't think it'd be worth it for the Jacksonville Jaguars to keep money tied into both of them. Now, the team I think that won't be landing Tyreek Hill is going to be the Arizona Cardinals. I think AZ won't make another trade for a star wide receiver. We're on to a different GM from the Hopkins trade, and although the D Hop trade was never really terrible, I think the Cardinals will be just fine with Marvin Harrison Jr. as a true number one. And as most of us know, Marvin's gotten a lot of flack this season. I feel like he will end up developing fine though, based on what he's shown us. He hasn't been as bad as many have said. I do think though that the Cardinals have what it would take for a Tyreek trade. But if I'm the Cardinals, I don't think you want to pull a big trade on a for a player that's a major receiver. I just don't think that is a trade or a player that the Cardinals really have to go after at the moment. Now, who does the False and Fact Sports think is the most likely team to trade for Tyreek Hill? Well, if I'm going to be honest, I feel like it might actually be the Commanders, and I wasn't too sure about this at first, but I also wouldn't rule out a comeback to Kansas City, except for that wide receiver room could get slightly backed up. I do believe, though, that the Commanders are willing to go in on a big name player. The Commanders might have McLaurin already, but they did end up having to trade a more recent first round pick in Jahan Dotson in the summer to the Eagles. McLaurin and Tyreek Hill, though, could be a good mix of finesse and speed at the wide receiver position for the Commanders. Jaden Daniels already has solid weapons, but I don't think any current receivers on the depth chart would be making a big move up to the wide receiver 2 slot. This trade could honestly round out the Commanders' pass game in my eyes, along with another lineman for Daniels could truly set him up. The trade that I think would have to happen at least is the Commanders sending a second and potentially a latter round pick swap, and that's a potential starting safety in Jeremy Reeves to the Dolphins in exchange for Hill. Now, that package does feel a little lighter than the Christian Kirk package might have been, and it wouldn't surprise me if maybe the Commanders have to give up a fifth as well. I believe they are missing their fourth round from this year, though. But I'd consider this a mostly fair trade, and with the Dolphins lacking some defensive secondary, this could help them acquire just that, as Jeremy Reeves has seen some time starting in the league. And although he wouldn't be the biggest splash of player, I could just see the Commanders trying to toss in, a couple extra draft picks to truly sweeten that deal for Miami. And I don't think it's time for Miami with this move to go full blow it up, but I do think it is clear and ready to note that the Dolphins might end up being in another rebuild in about 2 years. Now, with that all being said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Watch out for my playoff predictions coming out soon. I wish you guys a great day and thanks for supporting. God bless.